It has been over 7 years since Destiny 1 has gotten an update, but somehow the game is still alive, and actually there is a surprising amount of people playing it today. In this video, we're going to be investigating the current state of Destiny 1 and its players, and we are also going to cover a few main topics. I want to know if it's worth it for veterans to go back, and also should new Guardians who've never played the original try it out. I'm also really curious why some players have been religiously playing Destiny 1 this entire time, even though it's more than 10 years old at this point. Lastly, we're going to talk about the possibility of a remastered and modernized version of Destiny 1, because this is something that Bungie has recently acknowledged. Right now, if you go and load up Destiny 1, you'll find that it remains largely intact in the present day. Nothing was ever vaulted in this game and had a total of 5 paid releases, so all of these are available and also extremely cheap. Bungie recently made it so that you can buy the game and all of its expansions for only $20, so right now Destiny 1 is more popular than it has been in years. Both of the Destiny games used to get a lot of negative criticism for their price tags, but I have to say both of them are now extremely affordable. The D2 Complete Collection has been on sale for as low as $52, and like we just mentioned, D1 is only $20, giving you literally 10 years of Destiny expansions for a grand total of $72. Now, something to remember about Destiny 1 is that it's only on console, and notably, the game does not have crossplay like we've come to expect with Destiny 2 and many modern titles. To make matters worse, there are literally 4 different player pools that are dividing up an already limited number of Guardians. Xbox and PlayStation players obviously can't play with each other, but in addition to that, the older consoles were not updated with the release of Rise of Iron, so these consoles actually are still playing the Taken King due to technical limitations. It's kind of like a strange time portal back to that era of the game, so if you still have a super old console lying around, you could try booting it up and playing a very dated and laggy version of Destiny 1. Even with the current generation of consoles though, the game is limited to 30 frames per second and you can only play with a controller. Any mouse and keyboard players trying to go back will have a very rough experience when they just try it out, and they'll have to relearn how to use the aim assist and just a controller in general. In addition, the game has a narrow field of view that cannot be changed, and there are extremely limited settings, so you won't be able to do anything fancy like changing your layout or your dead zone sensitivity. In terms of loot systems, things are definitely a bit different back in Destiny 1. There is obviously no crafting, so basically all of your loot just comes down to getting a lucky drop from things like PvP, raids, or those extra beefy weekly bounties. You can also earn these legendary reputation packages, so for example, you could rank up with the Dead Orbit faction and then choose either an armor package, a weapon package, a chroma package, or the performance package. That's right, you can get the package containing the exotic weapons called the Lawnmower 5.0, the Weed Whacker 2.0, and a couple of lotions all together with one convenient travel case. Whether you're buying this as a gift for yourself or somebody else this holiday season, the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is exactly what you need to take your grooming game to the next level. Another convenience that is really nice is that the lawnmower comes equipped with a bright LED light so that you can see exactly what you're doing, and it's also waterproof so you can easily use it in the shower. Use my promo code ShadowDestiny to get 20% off and free shipping on your Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, and it will cover all of your grooming, shaving, and post-grooming needs. Thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to our coverage of Destiny 1 and answer the question, should you play Destiny 1 today? Personally, I think the answer depends on who you are and what your goal is. If you're a veteran player who unlocked everything in Destiny 1, you may not have a strong reason to go back outside of nostalgia and a desire to relive the good old days. Something that is worth noting is that much of Destiny 1's content has been brought into Destiny 2, including many of the strikes and Crucible maps. Additionally, the Destiny 2 versions of the 3 ported raids in the Vault of Glass, Crota's End, and King's Fall are generally considered to be more evolved and better experiences compared to the D1 version. However, playing D1 is the only way to experience the Wrath of the Machine raid, which is considered one of the better raids that Bungie has ever released. You may also want to go back to do stuff like the old version of the Prison of Elders for fun, or maybe just some strikes that are missing from Destiny 2. It can also be nice to play with the old story missions, which, unlike Destiny 2, are all actually still in the game. Perhaps one of the most interesting things you could do is a fresh playthrough on a new account, and that is actually what we did in preparation for creating this video. It can definitely be a fun experience for veterans, and of course, if you own the full collection, you don't actually have to go repurchase it for $20. However, there are also a lot of people who play Destiny 2 and never actually touched the original. Maybe it wasn't on their radar, but there is also the possibility that many D2 players were simply too young to play Destiny 1 because it is 10 years old at this point. I think for these people in particular, it could be very interesting to go back and enjoy Destiny's beginnings. There is definitely a different feel to Destiny 1, with it being slower paced, more gritty, and overall there are art styles and things in Destiny 1 that you really just can't find in Destiny 2. Especially for new players, Destiny 1 feels remarkably consistent as far as narrative and player progression goes. On the other hand, this is something that is very awkward in Destiny 2, since you cannot even play from the beginning. So much of D2's content has been removed that you literally cannot have a full story experience, and this has been a big criticism of the game over the years. To make matters worse, if you're starting a new account for D2, the game will occasionally serve you cutscenes and automatically launch you into missions that you haven't even gotten to from a narrative point of view. You'll probably also get lost between all of the different expansions because there are basically zero limitations on what order you play the events. In Destiny 1, however, you are generally forced to progress through the content in a linear way that is consistent to how the content was originally released, and this makes it make much more sense, and it also makes it much more approachable. While the first two mini-expansions, The Dark Below and The House of Wolves, are accessible partway through the vanilla campaign, you will still have to do a lot of leveling in order to unlock the first big expansion, The Taken King. Once you run through that campaign, you are actually still quite away from unlocking the Rise of Iron expansion. This encourages you to do at least a good chunk of the post-campaign quests before you're able to even launch the Rise of Iron campaign. When it first unlocks, you will be 30 levels below the recommended light level, so you will still need to do other activities in order to level up first. Some people might see this as annoying, but it does help to preserve the original experience that players had when it was first released. There are a few things that new players to the game will definitely want to understand before they jump into Destiny 1 for the first time. First of all, weapons do not immediately come with all of their perks unlocked, because you first must use the weapon and then spend Glimmer and other materials in order to unlock each perk column. Because of how resource intensive it is and how consistently you are able to get new and better gear, it is usually not worthwhile to upgrade a lot of the perks unless you get something that you really think you're going to use long term. On the topic of legendary gear, you should probably not plan on getting much of it until you reach the Rise of Iron endgame. You will get the Stranger's Rifle at the end of the vanilla campaign, but you will quickly start getting greens that outrank it. The blue gear level cap is all the way up at 380, and considering that you can't even launch Rise of Iron until power level 250, you will quickly be replacing any legendary that you happen to get your hands on. Infusion is an option for some gear, but outside of maybe a primary that you really love, it's probably not worth it until you reach the endgame. Something that's important to remember is that Destiny actually has two leveling systems, similar to D2 when it was first released. You have both a character level and also a light level, and your character level maxes out at 40. The light level, however, goes all the way up to 400, and it is an absolute grind to get there. There aren't quite as many skips as there are in Destiny 2, so if you want to get 400 light level the actual proper way, it's going to take quite a bit of work. The Destiny 1 light level system also works kind of strangely where you need to have your best gear on in order to get to higher levels, so make sure you're equipping all of your new stuff at all times. As you progress through the game, you will probably find yourself lacking in either character or light level as you tackle the next expansion, so you'll probably want to play through the extra missions or just play the game and just level up as you go. You can complete various side quests from the quest tab or just explore and see where the game leads you. Some are definitely easier or less grindy to complete than others, while some just naturally complete while you play the game. You will notice that some of these quests require you to do a specific strike, and when you consider the size of the player pool, this can be a little bit challenging to do. While some of these are soloable, it takes time, and I would definitely recommend finding some people to do them with if you can. Destiny 1 is absolutely a grind, and depending on how much time you play, it will take days, if not weeks, to get through all of the campaigns. Even just fully unlocking one subclass will take dozens of hours to complete, let alone all 3 per character. If you want to consider more advanced things like completing your collections, that will take hundreds, but probably thousands of hours. Some people might kind of see this as a chore, but I really think that this is actually where the magic lies for some people who are going back to replay Destiny 1 or even just trying it out for the first time. You have this feeling that you're constantly in search of pieces that make you stronger, and often every item you receive does slowly progress your power level. This will be a massive change of pace from people who are experienced in Destiny 2, because most of the gear are lateral moves at best, and most of the new weapons that come out are honestly just a straight up downgrade. In terms of the moment-to-moment gameplay of D1, you may notice that it usually has less enemies overall, with less focus on build crafting and more focus on gunplay. Something else you'll probably notice is just your general survivability. In Destiny 1, recovery feels slow, but resilience also feels oddly high. It's kind of an unusual feeling to be sitting there with a red bar health and not really fearing for your life and still being able to be aggressive in some situations instead of retreating to cover. On the other hand, the weapon system doesn't feel dramatically different from Destiny 2 because most players will still use a primary, secondary, and heavy, which you are forced to use in D1. One notable difference though is that with the exception of some sunset weapons and some exotics, primaries in D1 are always kinetic and other weapons like your special and heavy are always elemental. As much as people have complained about the ammo economy in Destiny 2, it is even worse in Destiny 1. It is rare to find heavy ammo bricks, and you will often find yourself reserving it for the most critical of situations. This can be a bit of a pain, especially considering that the bosses in Destiny 1 tend to have a deeper health pool relative to today. It is not unusual to be sitting there just DPSing the boss with your primary because you've completely run out of all of your special and heavy. You can also just run out of your primary ammo too, in which case you are put in a pretty bad situation. The game doesn't have rally banners, but it does have an item called ammo synthesis, and these will max out your ammo of the chosen type. In the case of you playing on a new account though, you probably won't have very many of these, and you'll probably find yourself in the back of the map whittling down the boss with a weapon like a pulse rifle. There are also a number of quality of life features from Destiny 2 that are missing in Destiny 1. Classically, people have noted that you cannot mantle in Destiny 1, and you also have a sprint cooldown. The game literally has a cooldown on how often you can sprint, and people find this highly annoying. You can eventually remove this with the Memory of Yolar artifact, but since you won't get this until the deep endgame, you will probably still find it annoying for most of your gameplay. Some other real challenges are not being able to open a map when you're on a destination, and you always have to go to orbit in order to view it. Because of this, you can only launch activities from orbit, and Destiny 2 players will definitely find this quite jarring. Of course, the newer D2 features like loadouts and weapon crafting are also missing, but one feature that would be really nice to have in D1 is the Fireteam Finder. A big reason for this is the Destiny 1 player population, especially when it's divided into 4 pools, is not the greatest. To be clear, there are definitely a lot of people playing the game and you will see them in the tower, but if you want to do a really specific activity, you might have a hard time finding someone to do it with you. You will notice though, on certain activities, there can be a large number of people doing them, and for example, on our recent playthrough, we saw a large group of people doing the Archon's Forge. The older but similar activity in the Court of Oryx was pretty much dead though, so you would have to solo it or find someone outside of the game to come join you. One thing that you might find a little bit challenging in Destiny 1 is doing match-made activities. You are often required to queue multiple times in order to find enough people because the thing will only start once you have a certain amount of players. If you queue into the more popular playlists in the Crucible, you will probably find a match eventually, but you may have a little bit more of a struggle in the less popular ones. Unfortunately, modes like Trials of Osiris and Iron Banner are no longer available, but even if they did exist, they probably would not be functional. When it comes to finding people to play with in PvE, the population of the game can make that a little bit difficult. The main obstacle here is that many quests require you to play specific strikes or do specific things, and the chances of finding another player who just so happens to be on that same quest as you is not very high. Unfortunately, even the Siva Heroic playlist, the most current and best place to earn rewards today, is just empty. The best strategy is really just to load into a strike solo and play through it for a little while and hope that someone joins you before you reach the final boss. The result of this situation is really that these activities just go a little bit slower, since of course they are designed for 3 players. For example, when recently playing the famous Valis to Arc Strike in the Siva Heroic playlist, it took us over 50 minutes to complete, with the only wipe occurring against the land tank. The deep health pool of the bosses combined with the limited ammo made destroying the vehicles very slow. Also, like we mentioned earlier, it is very easy to simply run out of all types of your ammo, which slows down the process even more. The good news with strikes though is eventually you will get at least one person to join you, and sometimes even 2, and this will make them much easier and faster to complete. If you're trying to go into an extra difficult activity that has a challenging part towards the start though, it's probably a good idea to bring in someone from LFG or someone from outside to join your fire team. While you will find that all of the popular original LFG sites are now offline, thankfully there are still places where you can find other people to play with. Probably the biggest is the Last Destiny City Discord server, which is dedicated to Destiny 1 players. Here you have LFGs for both the PlayStation and Xbox player pools, and people are actually quite active. Whenever I've gone in here, I've always seen people helping with various activities, or perhaps struggling with a quest and looking for some assistance. This could be a positive or a negative depending on how you look at it, but due to the limited number of people in this server, you will probably end up playing with the same people multiple times. Another really cool resource that I discovered is the Destiny Legacy subreddit, which I found to be surprisingly active. I made a post in there asking why some people still play the game, and I got nearly 100 responses, and we'll be covering some of these in a moment. Overall though, I just think it's so cool that there is a thriving community of people still grinding away Destiny 1 just like we all did back in the day. I recently put out a poll on my community page asking how many of you still played Destiny 1 within the past year, and I was somewhat surprised to see that roughly a quarter of you actually have. That is not an insignificant number. Like, just in my community alone, there are thousands of people who've played Destiny 1 recently. Of course, it's not going to be a perfect comparison, but if we roughly extrapolate this to the whole community, we can safely say that tens of thousands of people have played Destiny 1 this year. Looking at the replies to my post in a bit more detail, it seems that nostalgia is a predictable and big reason why many people go back to play Destiny 1. This player said, "I come back for the nostalgia and roleplay aspects. I really enjoy the grimdark sci-fi, bygone civilization aspect of D1, and it can be pretty relaxing to just slip back into your old digs and be a deputy of the Vanguard, keeping the last city safe, and reclaiming the network of planets that humanity used to be able to call home." However, it's not just D1 veterans who are enjoying the game in the modern day, as some players said things like this. "I wanted to try out Destiny 1 for the first time since I only have done Destiny 2. It grabbed me and I kept playing. I just really like the vibes it has. The sense of wonder and the environment and soundtrack just captivated me more." For other players, it was more about the difference in the gameplay when compared to Destiny 2. Quote, "I feel like the major thing about D1 versus D2 is the forced slower pace, because it is a console game. It restricts your mobility a lot, making every movement of yours feel meaningful, I'd say. Destiny 1 also avoids some of the challenges that Destiny 2 is currently dealing with, and for example, this player said, weapons and gear were more meaningful and not such a churn and burn fest like D2. Something that we also noted earlier is that the content vault has soured many Destiny 2 players, but little content was ever removed from Destiny 1. It is a game that you can actually play through again. You can't play through D2 because they vault the old stuff and you can't enjoy any old missions. Another thing some players focused on is the community and their friends, and they said it was a big reason why they've been playing Destiny 1 consistently. Quote, "I still raid with a group almost every week. I can literally stay up for hours playing D1, just having a great time playing with friends or playing by myself." So as we can see, there are many reasons why players sometimes go back and enjoy the original Destiny, but what about the debate that is taking place today? Do you think the Destiny 1 should be remastered and updated to reflect the new standards of the modern age? This whole conversation was kicked off by a tweet from Destiny community manager DMG when he replied to Professor Broman about the possibility of having Destiny 1 classic servers. He talked about the potential of giving the game updates, quality of life features, and other features that currently exist within D2. He also said, quote, "Happy to pass along feedback and desire. Zero promises, of course." Now there are a few different ways that Bungie could potentially approach some of the updates for Destiny 1. It seems that Broman was alluding to being able to play the original game, except it would reset to 2014 and then slowly get all of the updates just like it did back in the day. This would allow you to experience the evolution the game went through over the 3 years it was being updated, and although the game had its fair share of problems, this would definitely be the most ideal way to fully relive the D1 experience. Another possibility is that we could go through the route that DMG is saying here and do a complete rework. Bungie would go in and update the graphics, introduce some quality of life features like adding mantling to the game and getting rid of the sprint cooldown. They could also introduce Destiny 2 features like loadouts, Fireteam Finder, vaults from anywhere, and all of the other things that we've grown to expect over the years. Some people have even theorized about updating the subclasses to the D2 system and adding weapon crafting to the game. The thing is though, this would require a very significant investment from Bungie, and this is in a time when they are still reeling from the layoffs and they are working on adapting Destiny 2 to a more sustainable content model. Much of the game would probably have to be rebuilt from scratch in order to make it compatible with current consoles and current PCs, so I don't think this is a particularly likely option. A different possibility would be a small update that uses the original builds of the game, but with some enhancements that allow it to run at a higher frame rate on modern hardware and perhaps even work on PC with mouse and keyboard. Without being a developer, it's pretty hard to know exactly how demanding this would be to pull off. Vicarious Visions did put a lot of work into creating the PC version for Destiny 2, and it's unclear how much work it would take to make this for D1, and also if it would even be possible to port over that older technology. With that said, it would definitely be nice for people who no longer own consoles to be able to go back and play Destiny 1. And even if we just get an updated console version, having a 60 FPS version of D1 on current-gen consoles would be a huge win for players. If you want to know my personal opinion, I think it's relatively unlikely that Bungie will do anything for D1, even though there is a notable amount of demand from players. Again, I'm not a dev, but I imagine it would be pretty difficult to go back and update this game, considering that its development started literally 17 years ago. And yes, Bungie did start development for D1 in 2007, making the franchise almost old enough to vote in the United States. The development of the game is actually quite fascinating, and I covered it in my Evolution of Destiny video, which I will link in the description. At the end of the day, Bungie is a business and their goal is to make money, and since it seems that it might be difficult to monetize Destiny 1, it might not get approved by the higher-ups at the company. Even if they did manage to convince a lot of people to come over to Destiny 1, it would likely impact the player numbers of Destiny 2, and at that point, Bungie is just cannibalizing their own player base. It is possible that some lapsed players might come back to play, but ultimately it's unclear if this would be significant enough for Bungie to invest money into developing the game. Regardless of all of that though, it's pretty cool that Bungie has kept the D1 servers online for all of this time, and it was really fun investigating the game and learning about all of the people who still play it to this day. Next up, please go watch this video covering the entire evolution of Destiny, because I spent 1,000 hours making this video and sadly it's kind of underperforming. It would mean a lot if you clicked right here on the screen to watch it now, and I'm confident you will enjoy the nostalgia value. Thank you so much and have a good day.